Welcome, everyone. I'm Fred Schwarsky, W9KEY. I'm the chairman of this year's International Lighthouse Lightship Weekend special event station. It's a joint effort between the Ozaukee Radio Club and the LEFROG organization. The special event will take place in a few weeks, the third full weekend in August 18 to 21. For those of you that haven't been part of this before, I'll give you a little history, a little background on what it is, our past involvement as the joint clubs, the guidelines for the event, the objectives that we have, and how you can participate. We hope you all will. The International Lighthouse Lightship Weekend, it's a mouthful, so they abbreviated it, ILLW, started in 1993 as the brainchild of two Scotsmen who probably were having a beer or something at the time, and they were looking for something for their local club to do as a fun summer activity. And after thinking about it a while, they came up with the idea that Scotland has a lot of lighthouses, and that would seem to be an appropriate theme for a special event station. Besides, they're ham radio operators. You don't need much of a theme. You just need to come up with something that'll be fun. The first year, they had 11 clubs from Scotland and the Isle of Man, which were under control, or at least the lighthouses were under control of something called the Northern Lighthouse Association, I guess it is, in Scotland. So they got the permission from the association. They had 11 clubs signed up, and they had a successful event. They skipped a couple years, however, but during that time, they got inquiries from other countries that had heard about it, and Denmark, Germany, South Africa, France asked if they could become part. They said, okay, we'll start a new event, and they renamed it then the International Lighthouse Lightship Weekend. It experienced rapid growth from '93 onward. It's now become one of the most popular international amateur radio events that's held. It reached, before the pandemic, they had 450 stations in 50 different countries for one of the years. Last year, we participated, and at that time, there were almost 400 stations that were on the air that weekend, 47 of which were in the US, and we were one of the 47. Our participation, as near as I can find, and there may be older records, dates back 11 years. The first 3 years, 2011 through 13, we activated a Port Washington lighthouse. 3 years after that, we did the Kevich Grafton Lighthouse, which is a private lighthouse east of Grafton off of Highway 60. According to the people that I talked to, it wasn't the handiest spot to get to or to park or to access, but we did it for 3 years. After that, went back to Port Washington for the next 3 years, skipped 2 years for COVID, and then last year we got the ball rolling again and did the Port Washington Lighthouse. So when I say Port Washington Lighthouse, I mean the 1860 light station, which is in Port Washington, Wisconsin. I'll show you where it is, and we will be back there this year. Were you there last year? How many were there? Yeah, good representation. We set up 3 stations. This is the actual lighthouse itself. We had a total of 10 operators. We could certainly use more when we have 3 stations active. We had 42 daily visitors that checked into our log. And we had a lot of rain. That's why my little lightning bolt is up there. That's not RF energy, that's cloud energy. So we got rained out Friday night. We had just set up to maybe do some antenna testing, and the rains came. Hard rains, and we didn't have our shelters up at that point. Saturday afternoon, the same thing happened, but we had the shelters up then. So we got rained out. We didn't get as many hours on the air as we wanted, but we still had fun. We managed to log 12 lighthouses around the world, and we only had 281 total contacts. I'm sure we can beat that this year. hopefully we'll operate a few more hours than we did last year. Most important thing, the museum staff seemed particularly pleased to have us there. The museum is open during the hours that we're there, or at least part of the hours we're there. They have guests coming in and out. They give tours of the museum. We stayed out of their way. And in fact, we even talked about their museum to other people on the air. And we talked to some of their guests that were trying to figure out what we were doing. So we try to be good citizens, and we got invited back, specifically invited back. So why has this special event station thing become so popular? Well, not to slight Gary, but it's not a contest. I know some people love contests, some people hate contests, some are kind of in the middle, but it's not a contest. It's a special event station. There's a very distinct difference. There's no or very few rules. I think that appeals to me. There's no station rules, there's no antenna rules, there's no power rules, there's no cost to participate. You just sign up. You do have to register for it. They have an international website that you go to. There's no trophy. You're not going to win any prize. We will send out a bunch of QSL cards, though. So, as I mentioned, very few rules govern this thing. However, there is what the Scots call the spirit of the event. They want you to be part of the spirit. And the spirit is to expose amateur radio and the general public to what they call the plight, or really the importance of lighthouses historically. And I should include light ships, because there are also light ships stationed, and some of them will be active this week or that weekend. In order to meet that goal, the ham station must be as close as possible or adjacent to the lighthouse. You can't set up a half a mile down the road just because you can see the tower. They want you there. They realize you probably won't be in the lighthouse itself, but you're supposed to be as close to the property as you can physically get. The station must operate with the approval of the management. We have gained that. And it has to be officially recognized by the International Lighthouse Association. And there is a book. I don't know, I didn't look to see how many lighthouses are in there, thousands probably around the world. Each one starts with a designation indicating its country, and then a numerical, 4-digit numerical number after that. Now, you might ask, exactly what is a lighthouse? You think, well, that should be easy. But it turns out it's not so easy to define, at least for the purposes of being pure about your lighthouse. The event organizers are really quite strict about it. I'd say this is probably one of the big rules they have. The lighthouse has to be a structure. It has to have been officially registered in a navigation directory of some kind over the years. It should have a tower with an internal staircase, a revolving light, and at one time probably had a designated attendee for a lighthouse keeper. Also permitted are lighthouses that have become museums, which is what ours has. Ours was a working lighthouse since 1860. Somewhere along the line, it fell into disrepair and has now been resurrected by the Ozaukee, or the Fort Washington Historical Society. But what it really means is that there's a lot of things that are not lighthouses. Range lights, channel markers, buoy towers, breakwater lights will not be accepted as an official lighthouse. And again, you have to have a lighthouse number in order to participate. So what's the objectives? As I mentioned, promote your local lighthouse to the general public. Contact as many amateur radio stations as possible. That's the special event part of it. Contact as many other lighthouses as you possibly can. And have some fun. It's a beautiful location. We're up in a bluff, maybe 200 feet above the marina. Nice place when it isn't raining or lightning. So what is our lighthouse? Well, our lighthouse officially per the directory has the designation of the Port Washington, Maine, Lake Michigan, Wisconsin lighthouse. It's lighthouse number US 0114. That's important. We'll have 10 cards up at the stations because if you happen to reach another lighthouse somewhere else, you want to exchange that information with them. Maybe we'll get a card from them. Locally, though, it's known as the 1860 Light Station Museum. It's at 311 Johnson Street in Port Washington. I'll show you. It is up in the hill. Down at the bottom, this area is, I forget the name of the street, Franklin Street, I believe. And that goes from downtown Port Washington, which is Highway 32, up the hill. This is a steep hill here. St. Mary's Church is on the right. You go up, make a right turn, a left turn, another right turn, another left turn, and it takes you right down to the light station, which is here. This is a fairly old photograph. The area where we set up is the grasslands here. They've gotten substantially smaller over time. There's been more and more structure in there, but we can still sandwich in what we want to have. So if you put in 1860 Light Station, it'll take you there. And I recommend you do that if you haven't been there before, because there's some one-way streets up here that wind you around up in this area. I mentioned it's not a contest. So you can use any frequency, any mode that you want. No rules on that. Anything that's supported by your amateur radio license. And if there's some new hams in here, if you're a technician class and you haven't been able to get on HF, hopefully you're able to do that at field day, get some experience. If not, come to Lighthouse. We'll have control operators that can sit with you and get you on the HF bands and make some contacts. The digital modes, however, FT8, FT4 are, while they're not outlawed because there's not a lot of rules, they are highly discouraged. I guess that's a Scotsman's way of saying, don't do it. And they're discouraged because it's very difficult to pass on any information about your lighthouse. You can't talk about it. Phone stations, you can call CQ Lighthouse to identify yourself. CW stations, CQ LT, something along that line. If we have any CW operators show up, they'll know what to do. Now, the event runs officially for 48 hours. We don't participate that whole time, but it officially starts at 0000 Saturday, runs through 2400 Sunday, 2359. We start, or that translates into Friday evening, August 18th at 7 p.m., and it runs then through Sunday evening at 7 p.m. But we're in a residential area. There's houses around us. We decided in order to be good neighbors, we'd limit our operating to daylight hours. Now, I think this can change over time. In fact, the museum director said, you guys can run all night if you want to. He said, you're fine. You don't make a lot of noise. Now, he's not the neighbors. He leaves. So we'll see. But our plan right now is to start setup around noon on Friday. We'll have all the equipment up, or most of it up by Friday evening. We may do some antenna testing. We may not get the radios up. Depends on the weather. The real operation starts Saturday morning, 8 a.m., run through the day. Sunday, we start again at 8 a.m. and run until about 2 when we do our teardown. So I highlight those in red because hopefully you'll come out and give us a hand for that. So what do we set up for this? This is not exactly a minimalist venture. It's kind of grown over the years. Think of a kind of a mini field day. We have a primary station that operates on 20, 15, or 10 meters with a tri-band beam on a 30-foot tower running 100 watts. You can see the diligent crew here assembling the tower on the left and the other crew assembling the tri-band beam that goes onto it. This is a pretty good location too. We're up probably 200 feet up in the air to start with. So you can run a pretty decent station from up here. We have a secondary station that runs on 40 meters. And this is a shot from the back. You can see our tri-band beam for 20 back here. Here's another military mast that goes up, and in between them, a little difficult to see on the slide, is a 40-meter dipole. We have a third station that we set up. This is on the east side, the other side of the lighthouse. And we have a frequency agile vertical antenna here. You can just barely see it in the picture. And another way to run other bands if the bands become active. However, little warning, the stations are outside. We're using pop-up tents. It's a typical field day-like condition. Dress appropriately. Bring a chair. Bring a raincoat, maybe. So in this case, we have a tent for the 20 meter and another tent for the 40 meter and a tent for the 20 meter. And the other one is on this side of the house. If you, we'll have some snacks, some drinks, but if you want to stay there all day, bring a sandwich, or you can, there's local McDonald's and things within short distance drive. Stan's not here. I wouldn't have put his picture up if I known he wasn't coming. But Stan and Nancy operated last year. Mike Harrigan operated 20-meter station. Mike's doing the QSL cards for us this year again. Thank you, Mike. Joe, KD9RAW, is running one of the portable stations. One of the rules, this is a rule, don't park in front of the museum. The museum was open for its guests and tourists. We don't want to take up all the parking. This is a city street. There's not a whole lot of parking there. So park up the street or down below the museum to stay out of the way that way. Leave enough room for their guests. Consider signing up for a lighthouse tour. It's really a pretty cool facility. Bring your family if you want. You got grandkids or children, bring them along. And you can sign up for a museum tour online. If you go to the Port Washington Historical Society, you'll see a link to their museum. I think it's like $5 or $6 for adults and a couple dollars for children. Younger kids are free. You even get to go all the way up into the tower and look around, which is a kind of a tight fit. So please join us. It's a lot of fun. And even if you can't come out, try to work the station on Saturday or Sunday. We'll be on the air. I'm going to leave this slide up there so you remember what time to show up. It's been on here, wasn't it? Oh, there it is up at the top. W9CQO. We're going to use the W9CQO call. We have in the past, I believe, each time. I don't know. He asked what the QSL card looks like. It looks like a picture of the lighthouse. I don't have one with me. I'm sorry, I should have brought one. We've had QSL cards. We're using the same ones as we have in the past years. I don't know. Yeah, the question was, would the lighthouse in Milwaukee qualify? You'd have to check the International Lighthouse listings. I know for sure and I meant to show it, the other light tower on the breakwater in Port Washington does not qualify. It's not a true lighthouse. The one you're talking about is the old Coast Guard one. Is that still there? I don't know. It might be. There's the difficulty though of using places like that because we set our equipment up and we want our equipment up all weekend, but we're not there all weekend. Now we could have somebody camp out if we wanted and even operate, but we notify the Port Washington Police Department. They're aware of our activity. So we feel fairly safe leaving we don't leave the radios there, of course, but we can leave the tents up and things. So specifically as to which lighthouses, I can refer you to the lighthouse, the directory, and you can look it up.
Fred, I didn't get the difference between a lighthouse and a light ship.
Light ship floats, hopefully.
Oh, that's so
there were
stationary,
yeah,
anchored.
I would imagine they're anchored now. Some history buffs can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that a light ship was a portable station that they could put in places that they needed it for a short time. Don? Microphone? Stop, hold it.
My grandson, Paul, his wife's dad was on one of those lighthouse ships. And the greatest problem they worried about was the ship running into them.
Yeah.
You know, that was the greatest thing. And if you didn't behave yourself, you got stuck below deck. And it was not very nice down there. And the lighthouse in Port Washington, the bill for its resurrection was picked up by the country of Luxembourg.
For the actual light, for the lens.
They picked up
Yes.
the rest. The same with in Belgium, there's $2.5 million outfit that the country of Luxembourg also picked up the bill on.
Yeah, I would.
It's not a lighthouse though.
Again, I would encourage you to take the tour or get into the lighthouse and get up in the tower. The lens is amazing, and it must have been a very expensive recreation that they put up there. So W9CQO, and again, setup starts a little afternoon. Any other questions?
Fred, this is Peter.
Peter, go ahead.
I recall that the museum had a secondary building, a smaller one, where they have something they talk about the Edmund Fitzgerald. Do you know of a secondary building in there?
In the last couple of years, the lighthouse property has undergone some changes. The satellite view that I showed you is not accurate anymore. There used to be a lifeboat out there. There was another house. There was even a shed for, I think, oil or something like that. Some of that is now gone. Over the winter, the station built a new lighthouse or new lifeboat shelter that doesn't show up. We're going to have to fit in amongst that. The grounds have gotten much more crowded. So the building, one of the small buildings is gone. One of the larger buildings is still there, but it's not part of the tour.
Do you work with generated power or shore power?
It's an excellent question, and it was on one of my slides and it wouldn't fit, so I took it off. The museum kindly gives us shore power to operate, so we do not need to run generators. That also keeps it quieter in the local neighborhood. Are there other questions? How many do you think you can make it? I'm going to put you on the spot. Some hands? Come on, more hands. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Hope you can come and operate.
This is Peter again. If the weather's good, I'll take a drone video and maybe some photographs.
Oh, I'm sorry. Another question?
This is Peter. If the weather's good, I'll take a drone video and maybe photographs.
I'm sorry.
Drone. He's
Yeah.
gonna
As far as I know, it's fine. Yeah, as long as you can fly in a residential neighborhood without bothering people, it'd be great to have some drone footage of our setup and some photographs, Peter. We'd love it if you can do that.
We'll see what the weather's like.
I will double check with the lighthouse manager to make sure he doesn't have any problems, just to let him know. He'll probably want a copy.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.